So let's see. This first one, average time was 19 seconds. This might have been, so questions are usually randomly selected when the student is taking it. It might not be in the order that you received it. So if you're to read this again, and maybe we'll go around the room and see what you pick. So we'll start randomly. So Kim, if you read this again and go through the answers, see if you can determine what the answer is. I'm gonna make this a little smaller. If you don't mind, it will get smaller because in order for you to read everything. So take your time and tell me what you think the answer is. Again, we'll spend the time together to figure it out.
So which of the following is true of the connection between compensation and the agency relationship? An agreement to give and receive compensation creates an agency relationship. If an agency relationship exists, the principal must provide valuable consideration to the agent. The relationship is independent of any compensation agreement. If an agency relationship exists, the agent is entitled to compensation.
Okay, so Kim, and I'll do this for everyone, so don't feel that I'm pushing you. What are the two words that stand out for you in the question?
I would say compensation and relationship.
Okay.
So I don't think it would be the third one.
Okay, and tell me why.
Because they aren't independent of each other.
They are not, or they are?
The relationship is independent of any compensation agreement.
What do we mean by agency relationship?
So like the client to the principal.
Okay, so the client and the principal, and then you have the agent. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how, sorry, I'm gonna keep doing this.
No, go ahead.
How is the relationship created?
Between the client and the principal?
Correct. No, so client and principal is the same thing. So let's smooth that out.
Okay.
Client and principal is the same thing. Client, principal is the same thing. When you have a buyer, seller, landlord, tenant, they're your client, principal, same thing. How do
Okay.
they become a client? And anyone can help Kim. How do they become a client?
They sign an agreement, right?
Okay, good. So now they have signed an agreement. They have now become a client or principal.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So that's agency relationship. Okay, they have now signed an agreement. They are now your client or the principal. So now we are talking about once they have hired you, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is the relationship between that agreement and compensation?
So once you sign the agreement with the agent,
Mm-hmm.
then um, you become their client, right? If I'm the agent and you're the client, once we sign the agreement, that's the agency relationship.
Correct.
But compensation will only come if I find you a property,
Okay.
right?
So what?
Compensation to me is based on like, yeah, I don't know if I'm saying it right.
No, you're thinking like most of us. So let me put it this way. What if you sign, so there are different types of, let's say, listing agreements. What if the seller signs an exclusive right to sell and the seller finds the buyer? In that type of an agreement, does the seller still pay commission to the broker? Yes.
Yes, because it doesn't matter who finds the buyer.
Correct. So all of this to say where the money comes from is not dependent on the agreement. The agreement and where the money comes from, they're not intertingled together. So let's put it another way. Kim, you're the buyer's agent. You and your buyer agreed on a number, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you and the buyer say, do you know what? When I find you the house, this is how much I am going to get compensated. And technically, we know that the person who's getting compensated is the broker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you get to settlement. Is there a possibility that majority of your compensation as the buyer agent could come from the seller? Yes. Could it come from the lender? Yes. Could it come from the buyer's mother, whom you don't have an agreement with? Yes. So whomever pays the money and whomever signed the agreement, those two, they're independent of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer ends up being the one that you started reading with.
The one that I said. So
Yeah.
when I read questions, I try to eliminate two
Okay.
that I don't think that it would be. But clearly in this case, I think in this one, I think I chose the agreement to give and receive compensation creates the agency relationship.
Okay. Okay. So now if you saw this question again, yes, some people will say, but Brenda, you're telling us not to dig deep. That's a true statement. But Brenda is going to challenge you to break down the question. So you notice what I asked you. What are the two words that stand out for you, right? That way you know what is the question and you're answering the question, not your question. Yeah, yeah, okay. Let's see how we do on the second one. Sandra, help us. Oh, everyone got right on this one. So I'm going to move on. Okay, this is good. Everyone got right on this one. Fiduciary duties represent all offers. Perfect. Let's try. Oh, everyone got right on this one. Confidentiality continues even after the agreement has expired. Good. This one. No one got it right. Okay, Sandra, read this one and let's see if we can figure it out together.
Agent Michael is showing his new listing to a buyer who informs him that he has inherited $5 million. Michael is now bound by fiduciary duty to keep the information in confidence, disclose the information to the buyer agent, disclose the information to the seller, verify the buyer's statements before disclosing them to the client. I assumed it was verify the buyer's statements before disclosing them to the client. But then I'm thinking keep the information in confidence.
Okay, well, let's probably slow down a little bit. So when you read the question, what stood out for you? Who is Michael? Who's Michael working for?
Agent Michael is showing his, Michael is the agent, he's working for his broker.
Yes, he works for his broker, but who's the principal?
Oh, he's working for the client, yes.
Who's
For the
the
seller.
client? Is it buyer, seller? Who's Michael's client?
Agent Michael is showing his new listing to a buyer.
So who's Michael working for?
Agent Michael is showing his to a buyer. His buyer who is informed that inherited $5 million.
The seller.
Yes.
Huh.
Michael has the listing. Michael is working for the seller, right? This buyer is what? So in terms of definitions, the buyer is a what?
Customer.
Customer, yes. What do you owe a customer?
Fiduciary.
Ministerial duties, but not magisterial duties.
Correct. So in Maryland, we'll be getting into magisterial and ministerial. Thank you. What do you owe a customer is just the 3 things. So when we get to fiduciary duties, this is where I'm going to flip a little bit. You'll get used to this. We're going to visually see it and we'll talk about it. So let me probably start off with Kim did a good job of this one. Sometimes people want to see it. A client is also known as principal. You work for that person. They hired you, meaning your broker, and now you're working for this person. This is a buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant who has what? Signed an agreement with you. This is your client. When the person has not signed an agreement, so this is flipping around because we're having the conversation. So a customer, oh, am I showing? No, I'm not. My apologies. There you go. Just realized I wasn't showing. Okay, so when you don't have an agreement with an individual, this is a customer. An individual with whom you do not have an agreement with is a customer. A customer is a person you do not have an agreement with. This person did not sign a contract with you and or your broker. You owe this person, you the agent owes this person 3 things. They're not your client. You owe this person 3 things. What are they? I know Portia said ministerial. What are they? So customer gets 3 things. Customer gets reasonable care. Customer gets honesty and fairness. Customer gets disclosure of material facts. Customer will get 3 things. Reasonable care, honesty and fairness, disclosure of material facts. Customer gets the 3 things. Honesty and fairness, disclosure of material facts, and reasonable care. When they're your client, you owe them 6 things, and we'll talk that a little later. So back to the question, Sandra. Michael is working for who? The seller. So the buyer, unfortunately, this is shame on them. When they disclosed that information, Michael is obligated to who? The seller, not the buyer, because the buyer is not their client. Michael owes this buyer, customer, honesty and fairness, disclosure of material facts, and reasonable care. Buyer, shame on you for telling us how high you can go. I'm going to use that to my advantage to help my client. So I am going to disclose that to my client. That is why the answer is going to be this one. Michael works for the seller. This buyer, shame on them, when they disclose that information, that is information we're going to use. Okay. How are we doing?
Good.
Okay, good.
This is good breakdown. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You gotta break it down.